Hey guys, Randy Potato here, reviewing the patch notes for the first Darkest Dungeon 2 update of 2023. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe. I post new content every day. The latest update patch is finally here, fixing up the new relationship system after a month in experimental. Let's go over these notes line by line, and then talk about the broader impact for the game. The first change is they have now added revenge attack affinity moments. If a hero is attacked by a certain enemy, and on the very next action of the combat you attack that same enemy, you can roll positive affinity. This is meant to give parity between DPS heroes and support heroes in their affinity gain. This feels very smooth as a mechanic and works thematically, which is pretty important in making the new relationship system feel more natural. In addition, they also added follow-up attack affinity changes, where if you attack the same enemy immediately following another hero's attack, you can also gain affinity. Because of the other changes, and how well this follow-up meshes with the flow of combat, DPS heroes are actually superior in gaining affinity now, which I like because I favor an aggressive playstyle rather than the stalling that had become optimal on the previous patch. There are also now affinity changes when being moved by an ally that change depending on the stress level. I have not had this occur yet, but it's an interesting change, even more interesting that it becomes positive or negative depending on stress. And now, of course, one of the most massive and requested changes. Now positive affinity changes in combat are hidden before your action, eliminating the ability to infinitely stall to affinity boost. Negative changes are still shown, obviously. This is a top tier change that makes the game much less of a chore to play optimally. Next, they made it so full health heroes no longer get negative affinity from other heroes receiving healing. Notably, this is only full health, as I have gotten negative affinity from heroes still above half and unhealable. So minor change. Hopefully they keep tweaking this mechanic. They also removed jealousy from heroes with horror reacting to dots being cleared, so another minor positive in making the relationship system make more sense. They've also now added back in combat barks for heroes in relationships that can either lower or cause stress. Another fantastic change. These barks are unintrusive, but make the relationships feel more alive, and also provide more buffs and debuffs to relationships that can often feel irrelevant. The next change is a UI change that allows you to see the exact chance you have of getting a relationship at the next inn, including quirk modifiers. More information and less guesswork is always welcome. This change is absolutely incredible. Next, they changed how relationship quirks worked. Now if you have a quirk, such as Curmudgeon, that gives negative relationship chance, it no longer activates if you're in the positive zone. So basically, you can no longer roll negative relationships if you have positive affinity, and vice versa, you can no longer clutch out a positive relationship if you're stuck in the negatives. This is an amazing change in making the affinity building mechanic front and center, instead of having debilitating quirks that you have little counterplay against. Heavily reducing bad RNG that affects entire regions is always good for me. Next, they also changed relationship proc rate specifically for the first inn. You can no longer get a relationship at all if at neutral affinity in the first inn, and other relationship chances have been reduced. This not only fits thematically, but also further reduces bad RNG, especially early game RNG, which makes the game especially difficult and unfun for newer players. I do like that they only reduce chances for relationships instead of eliminated outside of neutral, giving you some reward for being able to push a relationship in the first inn with items, or still being able to hurt you if you risk it with an RNG affinity in item and lose the roll. And now a big potential change that I have been especially focused on, the Infernal Torch now has a dedicated spot on your stagecoach. Right now, this only means you get an additional slot for those of us who run Infernal only. However, they also note that long-term they're looking to expand the Infernal Flame functionality. They say this is a ways off, but what it sounds like to me is that eventually the Infernal Flame will become a sort of sliding scale type of difficulty setting, similar to Ascension in Slay the Spire. This is frankly a necessary change because of the huge golfing experience between players like myself, with 1,400 plus hours in Darkest Dungeon 2 and 2,000 in Darkest Dungeon 1, and players new to the series and genre. This allows the base game to be tweaked for newer players to make the game more accessible while still being Darkest Dungeon, and give experienced players more of a challenge that is currently lacking, since Infernal is nowhere near the difficulty of Torchless and Darkest Dungeon 1 right now. Of course, this is still speculation since they're a bit vague on this point, but all signs point that they're heading in the right direction here. And finally, we have some changes to Inn Provisioner, Hoarder, and Hospital Inventory. Some inns now have a more thematic stock. They have changed this from a recent hotfix that nerfed most provisioners and have reverted most inns back to normal, but I do applaud the idea of adding more variety to shops, as long as the variety does not come at the cost of wider availability and decision making. One good change is most inns no longer carry max amounts of food, meaning you need to plan ahead and earn food during the region before if you want the buffs. This forces more strategic play and buffs assistant encounters for players who run exclusively Infernal Flame. Hoarders have unfortunately been nerfed slightly, most notably the Valley Hoarder. I'm not a fan of this decision because the Valley Hoarder used to be great at allowing each run to feel more unique by granting you a lot more items upon run start. Hopefully they continue to adjust the stock these key locations have as we move forward. And finally, they have super buffed the hospital for some reason, which was already among the strongest locations in the game. You can now find healing salves in addition to the previous hospital stock at the shop. Sometimes multiple stacks of not only salves, but also triage kits. With relic accumulation boosted again, hospitals are a mandatory visit anytime you scout one now, if they weren't already before. In a change directly affecting the Act 3 boss, they have finally fixed the problem of the negative healing debuff causing damage if you try to heal with your debuff too high. This procced quite often in ways that you could not really affect, with random amorous heals, regen, and abilities like Crush or Solemnity being able to kill you, even if your intention for the move is not even to utilize the healing component. A good fix for an annoying problem that makes the eyes a bit less annoying. And finally, rounding out the gameplay changes are eliminating vague trinkets from the pool in the endgame, and removing certain rewards from road battles. They also have a whole host of UI and bug fixes. Not going to read through them all. The most notable for me is the Affinity UI change. It now presents in a much cleaner and pleasant way when getting road barks and at encounters. A very good change. Overall, this update was massive in fixing the issues we found this past month running the new relationship system, removed a ton of RNG, removed the Affinity stalling mechanic, and nerfed a huge amount of obnoxious relationship quirks. They've also hinted on finally adding a real difficulty slider, though it seems to be a ways off. The Hoarder nerf is disappointing, but I'm looking forward to how the inn variety plays out. A strong update that polishes up last month's patch to make one of the most criticized elements of the game far more enjoyable and engaging. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. I post new videos every day.